Great. It's just complete silence, and it.
And on that note, we are live with Genesis Office Hours, episode 26. I've got Cliff Seal with me today. Hey, Cliff.
Hi.
What's up? I'm going to circle back around to you in a second to let you introduce yourself to folks, but episode 26 is a momentous milestone. It's exactly 6 months of producing Genesis Office Hours every Thursday, so pretty cool. And you guys are still actually tuning in, so that's encouraging to shoot all the way for 52 and go from there. Before we dive into some awesome conversations with Cliff, I wanted to mention our show sponsor, who is WP Site Care. If you check them out at wpsitecare.com, and they offer all sorts of WordPress maintenance services, and then also a lot of cool a la carte packages. So we'll talk some more about that later in the show. But for now, Cliff, inquiring minds want to know who you are, what you do. So unload it on us. Bring it on.
All right. It's an honor to be here on the biannual anniversary of the inaugural Genesis Office Hours. I go by Cliff, which is really great because there's not a ton of Cliff Seals on the internet. So you can find me pretty easily. Just have to parse through articles on something that's happening in Ireland with endangered mammals.
Mammals?
Yeah, seals are mammals. Anyway.
I stepped right into that one.
There you go. Yeah, I do a lot of stuff. Full-time, I work for a company called Pardot, who's a part of Salesforce. So we do B2B marketing automation. I'm a user experience designer there. I've been there for 2.5 years at this point. But I got my foot in the door there by knowing WordPress. They wanted a WordPress person. We had a lot of WordPress projects going on, and that's kind of how I got my foot in the door. And I still do a lot of WordPress-related stuff there, as well as run our official plugin and stuff like that. Outside of that, I just don't tend to need a lot of sleep for whatever reason. And so my early mornings are filled with interesting things and have been contract work for 6 or 7 years at this point, I guess. Still do some of that, but at this point have also kind of launched some side projects with different teams, and including Evermore, which is what I hope we can talk a little bit about today.
Yeah, so I think Evermore is going to be the kind of the primary interest for Genesis Office Hours listeners. Mm-hmm. And I forgot to say, my gosh, if you want to participate and send in your questions to Cliff, you can do that on Twitter using the hashtag GOHchat. And if you're listening to this after the fact, either on SoundCloud or iTunes, you can go to carriedills.com/GOH to catch the video recap. So that said, yes, Genesis Office Hours, clearly focusing around Genesis products, services, anything to do with Genesis. So I think Evermore, maybe for those who have never visited the Evermore website, which is evermo.re.
Maybe.
Evermo, if you could give us the rundown of what that is.
Sure. So that's the evolution of a long time thinking about things and trying to figure out how to start solving problems that are honestly really hard to solve. And I think because at this point in the WordPress community, we still grow so quickly, and we have such basically a close-knit community, especially of developers, that it's so lucrative to build something that focuses on developers or designers who know enough to be dangerous or something like that, that's where so much of the innovation happens. But we take for granted there is a large swath of people who would benefit from an open source CMS, of which we believe WordPress is the best for a lot of them. And these people do not understand, nor could they do WordPress in some sort of 5-minute install. A 5-minute install requires knowledge of, for instance, what FTP is, how to unzip a zip file, and different things like that, right, that we take for granted because we work on computers, but it's not that easy for a lot of people. And so the option we end up pushing them towards is, one of which is WordPress.com, which is a really awesome option for a lot of reasons, and so are things like Squarespace and even things like Wix and things like that. But there's a really big gap in there because even when you use WordPress.com, even though your theme might be available in an open source version, even though your content can be migrated, you still essentially have to kind of start all over when you move from there to a self-hosted website. And on top of that, you're limited to the functionality of that platform and different things like that, right? And so Evermore is an attempt to help bring some of the power of open source WordPress, but get rid of the frustrating things that we ask people to learn just to get a website going. So more succinctly, elevator pitches. People pay. They pay a setup fee and they pay a monthly fee. We spin up an automated and pre-configured WordPress instance for them, instead of giving them the free reign to completely screw up a site by changing code or trying to upload a plugin that they found or a theme. You can't do that. Instead, we curate the best themes, which is where Genesis comes into play a lot here, and then also plugins. And so basically there's a repository that people choose from, and that does two things. One, it eliminates that risk that we mentioned, keeps people from having a white screen of death and having no idea what's going on. But two, it allows us to know what code is in the environment at all times, which means all of those issues with running new versions of PHP, configuring caching appropriately, worrying about theme and plugin conflicts are all pretty much gone, because we all understand the variables of what's happening there, and so we can optimize for it. So people get fast websites immediately, they're secure, and they really do get to just go straight into adding content, making changes, and things like that.
Love it. When I stumbled on your site, I was just thought to myself, brilliant. Like you've taken, like you said, you've really taken the complexities of, you know, what we kind of take for granted as web people, or people that are familiar with all these web development tools. You've taken all of that out of the equation and are just offering up basically a hosted service, hosted software service.
Yep.
And cool. So we did have a question, and we've got some good questions coming in. We'll get to those in time. One right off the bat wanted to ask about your hosting situation. Are you with Synthesis? I can't say that word. Synthesis.
No, no, we're not. So we are running basically just a VPS that we have that we've configured specifically for WordPress. So we're doing things that are a lot like what Synthesis is doing or other hosts and things like that. But again, in our situation, we're able to be even more specific, because even on Synthesis or something like that, I mean, you can still upload whatever plugin you want. You can still edit code and all that kind of stuff, whereas here it's not a possibility. So we can get even more fine-tuned for that sort of thing. And so, no, we're just using a common VPS, and we keep it pretty close to the chest, because we have a plan for, as we scale, that'll go from, you know, you obviously start with a single little instance, database and files and things like that, and then you start scaling out, you start taking things and separating them into different servers, throw load balancers on them and things like that. And so there's a whole plan that might change at any time based on how many customers we get, what kind of traffic there is, and all that, but it also allows us to scale resources really quickly. So if somebody, you know, gets really lucky and gets a ton of traffic and somehow it surprises us, we scale that puppy right up for them, so it becomes transparent.
And is this a multi-site situation? Is that how you're controlling all the, you know, available plugins and whatnot?
No, great question. So multi-site complicates things, and in fact, even, you know, core WordPress developers don't talk super favorably about multi-site and its current status with code and all that kind of stuff. But also another big feature of Evermore is that we make a big point to say one of the big benefits of working with something like WordPress and working with a lot of these themes and plugins and things like that, and the licenses that come with them, mean if you don't want to use Evermore anymore, it doesn't suit your needs, you grow too much and we really don't want to host you anymore because you're too big or something like that, right? We actually help you transfer off the service. And so we do that by making sure you get all the files you need, which is basically just a zip of things being used in the database. And you can take that to any host and replicate your site immediately and just move DNS and you're done. And so point being, that process was complicated. with multi-site. And so what we're doing is running. I've seen things that are a lot like this. I'm not sure if they're exactly this way, but we're essentially running a multi-tenant install. And so people are getting basically a configuration file and a database that are running off central repositories of files instead. And so it's a lot like multi-site, but without any of the issues and without ever having to share information between sites or databases or anything like that.
So what I just heard you say was you're a slumlord.
Ish. Yeah. Yeah. But a benevolent one.
That's excellent.
Thank you.
I think that a key differentiator for you guys, and something I really like, is that you make a point up front of saying how easy it is to move away if at some point your service is not a good fit for someone. So very cool. Let's see. We got a question from Pamela. She wants to know, do you get affiliate fees from StudioPress when offering their themes on Evermore? Or what's your, maybe just talk about your relationship with them.
Sure. So we didn't really have a formal relationship until, I don't know, a month or two ago, I think, and spent some time talking to Brian Clark, which kind of came about through a misunderstanding, actually. But so basically what we are at this point, or what we were originally especially, is just we own the biggest license that Genesis will let us have. And in doing so, a lot of what's involved in buying a license from any company, especially with WordPress and with the type of licensing you have, is you're paying for support and updates. Now, that's not global, so don't take that and apply it to everything. That may not always be the case, but in a lot of them, it is, and that's what you're paying for. And so with the setup that I just described, and with the fact that we also bring support in centrally, people are not contacting plugin or theme authors directly with support. They're contacting us, and we're fixing problems. And then if we can help a theme or plugin developer, we'll go on and help them. So point being, there's not an exchange of affiliates, anything going on right now, besides that when people move off of our platform and we tell them, not only here's the file, here are suggested hosts, like we want to get you going and we want to get you set up and we want you to have a good experience moving off. But on top of it, you're using this theme and these plugins, which are now premium. If you would like support and updates for these plugins, you're going to need to buy these licenses for yourself, and then you'll be contacting them for support from here on out. And so that's kind of the transfer out of there. But yeah, now we have had some closer dialogue and more specific chats with StudioPress, and that's why you now see, and I did the same with you, Carrie, because we use Winning Agent Pro. And so I've had conversations with both parties on that, and that's why you see now that we can kind of openly advertise that these are themes from StudioPress. Because whereas before we didn't have the ability to do that because you can't just use somebody else's trademarked name to sell your product. So yeah, at this point, again, it's no different from having just a full license and offering it to clients when you build a child theme or something like that, because in this case, everyone's just kind of running off the same set of files. But we're in talks so that if that ever changes or we need to pay more money, we will pay more money.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about support, because that seems to be the challenge that, as at least a theme developer or a plugin developer, or really even if you're just doing regular customer service for a site build out that you've done. But how have you modeled that, or what parameters have you put around that so that people aren't not paying for support?
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, so I would say that there are two kind of main things. One of which is, you'll probably hear this a lot depending on your questions, but we are very agile about this, and not in the like software development way, but just like literally agile in how we kind of grow Evermore. I'm not interested in leaving my full-time job. And so we're not trying to quickly ramp up so I can get out of a job I hate. I love my job. We're also not currently taking investment money or anything like that. And so we scale profitably at all times. So we were profitable from the very first customer that we had. And so in that, or by saying that, we're being very careful about what kind of parameters we put on things early. Instead, we're staying really sensitive and communicative with existing customers, if something becomes too much, we start talking to them about how we can kind of get this down or whatever else. But for the most part two would be when you go ahead and you ask for a setup fee up front that's not insignificant, and when you have a monthly fee it's not expensive for what you get at all, but it's not $5. You also begin to set an expectation with people that's very different than when you sell a plugin for $3 or $10 or even $30 for a lifetime, because these are people who have already invested a significant amount of money, and they already are starting to understand, I'm paying for this and there are parameters and these guys are helpful and they know what's going on and things like that. But at that point, when we're able to say, okay, what you're asking for is actually custom development, and you're going to need to pay us money to do that. Otherwise, your answer is you can't do that here. So if you'd like to move, we'll help you move off our platform. Otherwise, these are your options. And so it's kind of cool because it gives us this neat nuclear option that for a lot of people means losing a customer, but for us, we don't really consider it bad. No, we won't get their money anymore if they move off of Evermore. But at the same time, like, we don't consider that to be a bad situation. In that case, we've still helped people get their site up. They're still going to have a happy site somewhere else. And so it's kind of by moving around in the support thing instead of defining so many things quite up front, it's helped us to be really responsive to people without getting buried. So I hope that's not a non-answer, but that's sort of how we're approaching it.
You're so nice, Cliff, that even if you just told me, no, I can't help you with that, I'd smile and say, okay.
That is nice to hear. I try real hard.
So Jackie's got some questions rolling in, and Nir, I saw your question earlier, and I'm going to get to it because it's a great question. But let's talk a little more about Evermore for a second. What's the typical onboarding process for someone who's signed up for Evermore? Can you kind of walk us through that?
Sure. So they're usually going to pick a design up front. So they're going to pick a theme. Once they pick a theme, they're going to go through a really simple sign-up process. Pick a username, which is basically your kind of staging domain and stuff like that, right? So carry.evermo.re. It's a great domain, by the way. There's a lot of other things called Evermore, but we really wanted to do it anyway. So anyway, username, and then whether you would like to buy a domain right then, which you can do automatically through us because it comes for free, essentially, if you'd like one. Or you let us know you're using an existing domain, put in your credit card info, done. Once that's done, you get an email kind of letting you know. Again, you got to understand some of this onboarding process, like, we have to kind of break the WordPress community mindset, because a lot of these people have no idea what we're talking about. And we also want to be able to help people who really don't care if WordPress is involved at all. We're not hiding it. We do talk about it. We want people to understand it over time, but we do not need to hit people in the head with it immediately. And so they get an onboarding email explaining, hey, first of all, you're awesome. Second of all, everything went good. And then during the next kind of 24 hours, like, we'll be doing all the magic that you normally pay people a lot of money and wait a long time to do, or you spend a lot of time trying to figure out yourself. So we'll be doing all that magic in the background. What you need to go ahead and do is start thinking about content if you haven't already. Start thinking about how you'd like to lay out your site. If you have any changes from the demo, start collecting logos and other things like that if you need to, and get ready to get your site ready so you can launch something awesome. And then from there, they'll just get an email notification that the site is ready, log in. And then we're working on that sort of next step after that, right? Because that's a problem a lot of people are working on. Even if you do WordPress yourself, you are good, you finally hit the dashboard, and now what do I do? Especially because the dashboard is filled with really random stuff that people actually don't care about at all unless they already know how to use it. With the exception of that nice little full width thing that gives you like a getting started thing, that's by far the best thing on the dashboard now. Almost everything else is really confusing to people. So trying to clean up that experience to make more sense of it, and trying to really collect how we can do things like not only point people towards the right content to get started and things like that, but also be doing things where we can hopefully help walk people through some of the things that they're going to want to do to get started. And so right now, even though this won't really scale, or if it does, it'll be a little bit different. Right now we do some hand holding if people want it. Kyle, my partner in this, he's great about this kind of stuff. So I'm the developer in this situation. Kyle came in from a user perspective, which is why we were able to work together and really kind of tag along together on this concept. But he's great about walking people through stuff and helping them understand what it means to just, these are what the things are over here on the admin area, how to get moving and how to get started on accomplishing some of the goals you set out to accomplish. And so it's a lot of that. And beyond that, we're still kind of working on the same problem, again, a lot of people are, which is just like, how can we help with common software issues, discoverability of what's going on in WordPress, how to figure out how to do these little things, how to even know that there's like a screen options tab thing up there that's magical and hides and shows things that people have never noticed, and different components like that. So best we've done at this point is trying to really customize the admin area and then walk people through as much as we can when they get started.
Okay, I've been working with WordPress maybe 3 or 4 years now, but you mentioned the screen options tab, which I've known about that, and that's beautiful, but I just discovered something new on the post editor yesterday, and it is there's something that looks like a little eraser. Mm-hmm. So if let's say you copy and paste something that comes in with some hideous HTML or formatting around it, you hit that and it magically disappears.
Yep.
Cliff, the rest of the world knew about this and they were hiding it from me.
They did it.
I have manually stripped out markup so many times, and I couldn't believe that button was there all this time.
They didn't know about it because they also don't know about what is it? Shift Option Command V, which is the unstyled paste. Do you not know about this either?
Oh my gosh, we're just gonna have to do. Can we call it Cliff Notes?
You are welcome. No, you can't. Boom. You can't call it that. Nope. But yeah, no, man. I'm right there along with you. I mean, no matter how much time you spend in it, there's another thing, and sometimes you don't even know until somebody asks you how to do it, and you start Googling around for some code answer, and then you find out there was a button there that would help you do it the whole time. I mean, yeah. And this is a lot of conversation about WordPress too. It's like, I tried to write a post about this a few weeks ago, but just because WordPress is I think, the most intuitive open source CMS option does not mean it is objectively intuitive. It's really hard to do. It's really hard to put all those tools in the toolbox and make it to where it makes sense for people, especially when you try to unfairly compare it to other types of CMS or blogging situations where the only goal is to write a post. It's a lot simpler that way. So anyway.
Yeah, there you go. And Jackie kind of touched on that earlier with a comment that she had about as WordPress has grown and the complexity of options, etc. And it sounds like you're modifying, not going with a full-on custom dashboard like maybe Rainmaker does, but moderating what people can see to make it less confusing or take away at least some of the clutter.
Yeah, so an example of that, and I would love to talk about the difference between us and new Rainmaker platform, because what they're doing is amazing. And in fact, if people are more well suited for that, we throw them that way so quick it's not even fast or funny. Fast, funny. There you go. Too many jokes. Anyway, but yeah. So what we do in general, just with the admin area. So to give an example, it's like as I mentioned earlier, you get a pre-configured site, right? So security is, for the most part, for the very common things that we have to learn to do and remind ourselves to do, those things are already taken care of. There is no reason to throw someone a confusing plugin interface that allows them to undo those changes, right? So that's not there. Since caching is already taken care of, and we use a variety of different premium and written plugins and things like that, there's no reason to have that kind of stuff available to a common user when you're already taking care of it in the back end. So every chance we have, and like the press this bookmarklet thing, gone. So like different pieces like that, like let's remove some of those options. Also, obviously, as I mentioned, like that code editor thing, which will let you blow up your site from within your site, which is neat. Yeah, a feature, not a bug, or something like that. Anyway, you can't get to that. And so a lot of those things are removed. And so, and then on the dashboard, like I mentioned, like we try to throw, not only do we try to uh, automatically remove some of the confusing or unhelpful things, we want to over time add more helpful things to that dashboard and make it more like a regular dashboard would be for most people. And so it's very light. We're not customizing things so much as we're just saying we don't need that widget available, and we don't need these menu options available. And so from there, menus can just change based on what plugins users activate. But a main difference with us and new Rainmaker platform as well would be, they're taking a fresh approach in using WordPress as a piece of that puzzle and then doing something better for a specific audience on top of it. That's really cool. I have nothing against that, and neither does Kyle, neither should anyone, because it looks really good. But one thing that we want people to be able to do right is when they are done using Evermore, or even if they don't, if they continue to use it for forever, we want them to, whether they realize it or not, become expert WordPress users while that's going on. We want to empower them to understand what it is that they're doing. And we also want them to they become knowledgeable about something and it feels more effortless because they were just working on their site, but now they've learned something. So now if they ever encounter another WordPress instance, they already know how to work it. Now if they take that WordPress instance to somewhere else, they already know how to work it. Things don't change, nothing is different, and they don't have to worry about whether we're going to keep updating bugs in our special admin dashboard thing that we throw in there. And so again, the focus is very much on portability and on utilizing that open source component. And so, yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool.
So it sounds like your experience with UX has sort of led you down the path in terms of how you're customizing the experience for your users, which is cool.
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole.
It's Inception. So that's actually, Nir had a question. Can you describe the process that you're doing or go through with the new client regarding planning the UX of a client's website?
Yeah, so this is a good example of, I'm not sure if the question is getting to this exactly, but so what we don't want to do really, or what we're not trying to do off the bat, is be a development agency for people, right? So even though we want to help people move past step one once they get a dashboard and a new site, moving into content, we're not doing that content for them unless they're really demand it and they will pay us extra. We're not configuring their site beyond automatically making it look like the demo and putting in sample content, which is a cool thing Squarespace does that we totally took from them because that's a really good idea. Also because I know we can do it, but setting up a Genesis theme to look like the demo to start with is a lot of work. And it can get really confusing. And so by default, we'll go ahead and make it look like the site you wanted it to look like, and then you can go back and edit things. And then, so as far as kind of moving on past that, we try to be very hands-off with that. We like for people to have as much control as they can possibly have. But we are trying to work on what the process might look like if people do want more guidance. They need more information. They're not sure where to go and things like that. We want to help people with valuable content. But at this point, we're just kind of taking it case by case and trying to use the resources of other people and give some great examples of ways that you can move forward based on your current case and things like that. So, I assume we're talking about within the confines of Evermore with that question. So I hope that makes some sense.
Well, do you know yet, or in terms of your vision casting for Evermore, do you want to stay narrowly focused where you are, or would you, and then refer out to vendors or offload people onto other services? Does that make sense? Or would you like to grow your model to kind of include some of those what now or you don't consider your core services?
Good question. So because of my situation, I don't have time to give people the kind of attention they need to really walk through a process like that. Kyle does do that for some folks.
Say hi to your wife.
Oh, sorry. Shoot.
Sorry. Photobomb.
It's okay.
Oh, there's video.
Yeah.
Hi. How's it going? I'm Carrie.
Sorry. Awesome. Cameo by the best looking person in the house. Oh man, how we lost it. Oh, yeah, so I don't have the time to be able to kind of help people with that. Now, Kyle has, and Kyle will do it depending on kind of the requests and different components like that. But as I mentioned earlier about kind of staying agile with things, the answer to a lot of questions like that are we don't know yet. And so what we'd like to do, similarly to, do we stay broad or do we get kind of specific on things? We don't know yet. But we do know we're spreading our nets really, really wide, which is a great example of why, like, we don't get any, like, just random inbound search traffic because there's no way to do that. I'm looking for a website solution thing. No, we'll never get that, right? And so we know that in advance, but we also didn't want to come into the situation and say, we want to pick this niche of people and just go for broke on that niche, or we want to offer this complete streamline of services, and that's what we're going to do, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Instead, again, we're planning for that kind of slow plodding growth, and we're staying really responsive to what customers say, what people who are interested in us say, what people who are interested in us who will never use Evermore say, and kind of take those into account. And we continually talk to other people inside, outside the WordPress community to figure out what are the needs of small businesses who this will serve, and like what portions of that would be best served by us. And so there's just kind of a lot of going on at this point, and we take a lot of notes and talk a lot and try to communicate about that to figure out how we can help people best.
We had a question, and you mentioned Kyle, and he's with us in spirit. I saw him hanging out on Twitter.
Yeah.
But how has your experience been? And sorry, Kyle, you might just have to close your ears on this one. But your experience of working with a partner, maybe just some practical things, like how did you structure that relationship? Are you under, is Evermore a legal entity, or how does all that work?
Mm-hmm. Good question. We talked a lot about that early on because I believe really strongly in that. I have another company that I own as well, in which I have a partner in which there's an arrangement similarly. Like, me and Kyle were friends before this, and I would rather not screw that up because of whatever's going on. So so currently Evermore isn't its own legal entity. It's a product of Logos Creative, which is the company I've been working under for a really long time. That might change eventually. Right now, it doesn't need to. Basically, the long-term vision of partnership with Kyle is we work out payment arrangements amongst ourselves and things like that. But the hope is we can get things to really take off. He would rather put more time into it than I'm able to. So he would be the first person pretty much to go full time, and as well, I would give him most of the money than anything made. And so that really helps incentivize that sort of relationship going forward, because for me, again, because we plan to be profitable from day one, if no one else ever signs up and I'm just kind of maintaining this in a technical sense, I can manage it okay, and everyone continues to be happy and there's value exchange and all that kind of stuff. But if it grows, I can't handle it, nor do I really want to. And so there's kind of a growth vision in place for that, in which Kyle becomes more and more the go-to person to ask things, and I just become the nerd behind the curtain.
I think what you mentioned about wanting to protect the friendship is a mistake that I've seen lots of times, like in family, when family members go into business together, when friends go into business together, and you get 2 or 3 people that are passionate about making something happen, and you just want to go gung ho and not sit back and actually make the formal arrangements so that everybody's protected when something either goes sideways or your visions differ or whatnot. So sounds like you've got some good wisdom going on in your in your business model. We're about at the halfway mark now, and we're going to get back to some questions here in a second. But I do want to mention our show sponsor, WPSiteCare.com, again. And here's the deal. So every week now for 26 weeks in a row, I've been able to bring you Genesis Office Hours, bringing on awesome guests like Cliff to drop knowledge bombs and teach us about mammals. And that cost, there is a cost associated with that, and so I opened up the show to sponsorship about a month or so ago, and WB Site Care was the first one to step up, and I so appreciate. I know they support a ton of WordCamps and basically just support a whole lot of things that people are doing in the WordPress community. So a shout out to them for helping this to happen. If you are interested, this is a shameless pitch to go to carriedills.com/sponsor if you're interested in sponsoring an episode. But that said, we will now get back to our regularly scheduled program. And yeah, so Cliff, on every show, we have to make some observations about your background or the background of whoever's on. And we were talking pre-show about my bulletin board that is mostly just a repository for paper as opposed to functional notes. But tell us what you got going on behind your head there.
Oh boy. As we pointed out earlier, this is where business cards go to die for the most part. Yeah, other kind of random things that are small and won't get lost otherwise. Over here is a quote that you can't see all of, but it's very serious that April wrote up here that I really enjoy having over my desk and haven't changed for quite some time. And then, sorry, April, you're going to be a little bit on camera again. And then, ta-da!
Sorry.
And then this is, actually, that's a poster I designed for our first anniversary. It's a quote from a band called Me Without You. We were announced in our wedding to that song, so I made it, and it has hung in every home ever since.
Nice. Every home? Like, what are you moving every month?
Approximately.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. I think we're settled now, though. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for letting us in on the little mini tour. It's kind of fun to see people's work environments.
Thank you.
So, let's see. We'll get back to the questions over here on Twitter, and what you mentioned about setting up those Evermore sites to look like the demo kind of hit a nerve in a good way. That's something that people find super challenging. So cool that you guys are doing that. Let's talk. I want to talk about UX outside the context of Evermore, because this is something I don't really have. I know it when I see it. Of what a good UI looks like, and what a good user experience is. But in terms of, I think you get so used to, okay, WordPress has a navigation across the top, a content area on the left, and a sidebar on the right, and it's hard to break out of that mindset and be creative about other ways that might actually be a better experience for users. So kind of drop some knowledge on us there.
Oh boy. So outside Evermore or outside WordPress? What are we talking about?
Outside Evermore. Or outside, I mean, it could be outside WordPress as well.
Well, okay, so most of the trouble that kind of comes into play is that level 7 is like the actual implementation of an interface, right? The most important measurement, I'm going to get on this high horse because I'm actually teaching a workshop in DC next week about this. So the true measurement of UX and the way that you start when you're trying to design a true user's experience in a way that benefits people and also a business it's much less about the minuscule interactions that happen and the little pieces and how much sense it makes. Those are all good and really important. But the thing that we should actually be trying to measure, which I really appreciate from WordPress a lot of the time, is so their goal is always stated as democratizing publishing, right? So the kind of implied stuff behind that is you're free to do the things that you want to do, and you can do them with relative ease. So like that's the measure of user experience design through WordPress. Everything that's done should be done to serve that kind of goal. And if it can't be tied back to that, it's irrelevant, and it might even be bad. And so through that is where we've gotten a lot of what a lot of people are going to call UX improvements as well inside WordPress in the last several versions. Things like today, 4.0 day, by the way. That's really awesome.
Benny has dropped.
Yeah, but like, so in the post editing screen now, you've got this little like sticky post editor thing that is real nice when you, right? Everybody loves that, right? But it has, the fact that it's good doesn't really have anything to do with the implementation of it. The purpose of that is that it's distracting when I'm trying to write something to have to like go down and leave it and come back up, and you're switching contexts more importantly than just switching elements or finding where they are, reorganizing them or things like that. It's the fact that that's helping you focus on the most likely thing you came to that view to do, right? And so that's a lot of the approach behind things. Is like that becomes really like, it feels really corny to talk about and to constantly kind of break stuff down like that every time you're designing a piece of anything, when you always have to tie it back to like, how does a person feel about their level of accomplishment after they've actually interacted with this? Like we say, like I use this quote from Kathy Sierra because it's brilliant, but like the true measurement of user experience is measuring the post UX. So the idea is that it really doesn't matter how good it feels while it's happening. What matters is that it feels good after the task that they came to do was accomplished. So again, if you're democratizing publishing and making that easy, then the true measurement of that is, am I able to get my writings out to people in the way that I want to? You know, or how many snags did I encounter along the way to just trying to write a post about something today? And allowing everything to kind of serve that common goal, to where you kind of look at what's causing problems in the middle, and then you find little snags, and then you fix those snags so that it's way easier to ignore the interface that you're looking at entirely, and then instead to focus on what it is that you came to do. Like, that's better. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it's a whole, not a whole new world, but just one I don't know a whole lot about other than what seems intuitive.
We'll use this. People don't buy hammers or nails or walls. They buy being able to hang a picture on a wall. You
Boom.
know? Yeah.
I'm putting that in the Cliff Notes.
You can. I'm not going to read them.
I'm sorry. You've probably, since your playground years, been teased with that one. So.
Yeah, last year, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Jackie wants to know, do you encourage users not to use the visual editor?
Nope.
Nope.
No, as much as possible, and this has been another kind of push that's been fun as WordPress has evolved in the last couple of versions especially, and then with this one, and then moving forward into future versions, because I keep up with development and try to contribute when I can, though I haven't made it on that contributors list yet. But yeah, no, we want people to use the visual editor unless we can switch them to the front-end editor entirely, which is a real goal. And that's available on Evermore, although we don't do it by default because it's still kind of in an experimental phase and things like that. But that's the true goal, is getting people there and having that be an intuitive experience. And then additionally, thanks to the last Genesis update, and us choosing some different things intentionally, everything you need to do to set up a site visually with any of those themes can be done in the customizer, and that's where we tell you to do it. That's the future of how you're going to be, since widgets are there and all that kind of stuff, that's the future of how you're going to be able to do things like that. Since Genesis is widget built, like that was a very strategic decision. And so being able to move those widgets around, make those changes, and then additionally, since Genesis moved their options over to also being available in the customizer, you can make all of those option changes there. And then additionally, some customized styling that we let you do is all available in the customizer as well. So pretty much anything you want to edit layout and design-wise is available in the customizer. Everything else should be done in the visual editor. Because hopefully people aren't trying to do too many funky things with HTML. And if they do, we're probably going to look at finding a way to solve that problem for them with short codes or something like that instead.
Gotcha. What you were talking about, the visual editor just made me think one of the new features in 4.0 is the ability to preview embedded video right there in your post editor screen, which is pretty. And I'm going to, if folks haven't seen a link, I'll post it here on Twitter that just has the video kind of showing off some of the highlight reels of WordPress 4.0. I've all morning, so I haven't gotten a chance to actually download it and play with it yet. Have you?
Yeah, I've been checking it out for a while, but I haven't rolled it out. On feature updates, so not security updates, but on feature updates, I take it real easy on client sites because I don't know what might go on with them. I control all those, remotely, past contracts and stuff like that. Like I do a lot of things like that for people just because I'm a generally nice dude, and it'll make their site more secure if I do it for them, and if they're aware. So, but for instance, like with Evermore, we're just waiting on 4.0 to be tagged in the Git repository, and then everyone will have it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the Conductor plugin that Matt Medeiros and his crew at Slocum Studios are working on?
Is that how you say his last name?
That's how I say it. I mean,
if that's consensus, I'll go with that. Medeiros, I like it. I might roll my tongue with it. Medeiros.
Medeiros.
Yeah, there you go.
Matt, are you out there? We're Medeirosing right now on the show.
He's always out there.
Yeah, he's always got an ear.
He's huddling behind the Anyway, yes, I was able to get a little sneak preview of what was going on with that several weeks back, and I told him at the time I really like those sorts of approaches. I had some feedback and things like that because being a UX nerd, people enjoy asking me questions like that, which is fun sometimes because sometimes they really don't want feedback. But old Matt did, and so that was really awesome. But yeah, I liked the kind of stuff he was doing and was super intrigued by the way that they were doing it in the back end. That was really neat to me.
Yeah, it's cool. I've gotten to play with it, and he was on the show a few weeks ago talking about it. And but Jackie had asked a question. Would a plugin like that make sense in an Evermore environment, or is that a little too much outside the scope in terms of how you want users to be able to control the display of content?
It's a good question. The answer to that is yet again, we don't know yet. We play it real safe, or conservatively, I guess we'd say, on the side of being able to completely destroy things, which that will give you some ability to do. Even though you won't break anything, you now have the ability to really muck some things up. And we've even been really careful with the amount that you can change styles and things like that. Initially, we weren't even going to allow them at all. Like, you're picking a great design theme. You should leave it alone. Which is not bad in theory, but a little bit unreasonable to some extent. So answer to that is I'm not sure, but I gave him this feedback at the time. Like, it makes sense to me, but I do think it's got it's got a little bit of a gap to fill in terms of just like making sense to people when they see it. Just like, okay, like what is a conductor, or what is the difference between that? And he may have fixed some of this stuff since we talked, but just kind of like, I'm looking at this, that's neat that I understand the power of it, but it's the same problem with, like, I saw an article recently, like published yesterday or something like that, just about like, again, how much we take for granted and how easy it is to do things in design, even when you got something like a visual page editor or something. And so, yeah, Conductor's been one of the coolest things in terms of getting some innovation in there without making it unnecessarily complicated. But we're still playing it pretty safe on that, so we'll see how it evolves.
All right. And when did Evermore officially launch?
June-ish.
Okay, so it's, still very much in its infancy in terms of getting some consistency from, probably even your sales numbers month over month is nothing's hadn't been around long enough to notice trends, that sort of thing?
No, and like I said, noticing trends is even more of a component of what we're doing than it is with most people. So that means we're moving really slow on purpose. And so we've got a couple of experiments that we're working on now. So we'll be able to kind of test out a couple of different ideas and see if they work and see if that helps us move forward. But yeah, it's been, we had one or two full customers before we launched at all. And I explained this concept to them. And I ran a pilot program a while back, so kind of vetted all the ideas and stuff like that. But yeah, so we started with a couple of customers. We've added some since then. But the rest of it is really figuring out how we can hone the message, because we're trying to take something really complicated and make it simple. But the other fun thing is that so many pain points that Evermore solves, you aren't aware of until the first time you try to do all this stuff. And the first time you spend a weekend trying to upload WordPress when you don't know what FTP means, and like all that kind of stuff. Like, I've seen it so much. And once people are there, I can say you'll never have to learn another acronym, like at least on this side of really needing to invest in your website, right? And so once they're there, that makes sense. But for people who haven't experienced that yet and don't know how much of a problem that's going to be, we're really trying to figure out how to talk to people without being like scary on purpose,
You're scary. I'm scared.
As you probably should be. But I'm talking about customers. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
There's some conversation going on about the visual page editors, and to clarify, I think one of the questions asked earlier was on using the visual post editor, when I think visual page editors, I think of something that's generating markup for you in a terrible fashion, and we were just talking about the actual visual editor, unless maybe we weren't, and I just missed it all.
No, I was talking about the WordPress initiated development that's you can get as a plugin right now. That's just like you load up a post or a page, and then you can click edit, and then you get a toolbar, and you're editing content. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're on the same page then.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got a few minutes here, so if you have any burning questions for Cliff, go ahead and get those in there. We've got one from Jan, who speaking of mispronouncing people's names in WordPress, I was calling you Jan in my head for a long time, and now I know that it's Jan. So hello, Jan. Cliff, he wants to know, why don't you use contracts for clients and/or support?
Hold on, I'm still laughing because you said mispronouncing, and that's the gift that keeps on giving. Okay, contracts.
I haven't even had a beer yet today. It's
like 7 a.m., right? Anyway, did we say contracts?
Yes, contracts for clients.
Because we want people to leave when they're ready.
So do they have the option to pay up front for, bulk pay for a time period, or?
I mean, I can't imagine opposing taking money. There's not a stated option, but I would definitely accept full payment for a period of time. But yeah, I mean, the goal is just like there's a lot of intentional honesty and transparency going on with this. Because of the way we set up this business, we don't have to worry about not getting food on the table if things don't go well. And so we'd rather do this in as much of a helpful way as possible. And I don't know, Chris Lima is always kind of the little angel on my shoulder telling me to be helpful. And so I listen to him a lot. And so I like to think that these are the types of things that would be the most helpful way to handle them. So at this point, no contracts, at least not required contracts, because I don't think that they're helpful to anybody in this situation. But we have talked about, would it be better if people, especially if we change kind of options or available plans and stuff like that in the future, if somebody would like an option to be able to pay, a fee over time, which is a lot of the reason why there's an upfront fee, is because there's not a contract, and so much of the work gets done up front. So it's a thing worth considering, but at this point I'm just I don't want to throw that on people unless it would be helpful to everyone.
Got it. To a tweet, and it's hard to do that and talk all at the same time. Otherwise, I'm just mispronouncing things all over the place. That's going in the Cliff Notes. Let's see. Yep, that's already been mispronouncing has already been tweeted. Well, folks, that's it. Let's call it for the day. So Jackie was asking about, in terms of UI UX moving forward, are there any, WordPress always tries to basically not break itself. Let me just start that sentence over. Backwards compatibility has always been sort of at the, not at the forefront, but very important for WordPress. So in terms of UI, UX, is there anything to be concerned about? I don't know if that question even makes sense. I guess they've gotten away from. I'm just going to stop talking. I'm going to stop it. Jackie, I'm just going to let you email that question to Cliff because I'm bungling it all up.
But I can interject. That's a really good example because we were talking about UX earlier. The backwards compatibility of WordPress is a UX decision, which has paid off in dividends. I believe it's maybe the most important thing that's been chosen in the code base that has led to it being as prevalent as it is. Yes, it makes developers angry. It makes me angry because it's not as performant as it could be. But in democratizing publishing, nowhere in there does it say making naturally angry people happier. And so, by choosing to go to that goal so that you can update substantially or not update, and there are these different options and there's a lot of room in there, you avoid so many of the problems that other CMSs have where like upgrading even a minor version is really daunting and might break your entire site. And all this kind of stuff. So I really love that personally.
I'm not interested in making naturally angry people happier.
Mm-hmm.
You said it.
I did.
On video there.
I did.
All right. Well, on that strange and semi-awkward segue from me, I take full responsibility for that one. We're coming up on the top of the hour and want folks to know how they can get connected with you, talk with you, stalk you, all those sorts of things. So you've got all these adventures. You said Logos Creative or Logos Creative? Logos.
Yeah,
Locust.
It's Locust. That's scary. It's pronounced logos because it comes from the Greek word, not the plural of logotypes. It's a thing. I named it a long time ago. Anyway, yeah. For the most part, that would be the benefit of having the name CliffSteel. So you can just start searching there and find what you're looking for because it's a nice repository of things that are pretty much solely about me, and you can't really get confused with another person.
All right. No other cliff mammals out there. So will we see your name on the WordPress 4.1 contributor list?
I got a couple of patches sitting there.
Sweet. All right.
They're ready. I never know what to do about that. Like, is it okay to bother somebody about that, or is that rude? I don't know. Sometimes I see people out there just like on the Twitter, it's just like, hey, why don't you come look at my patch? I got a patch up. And I never know what to do, so I just kind of sit there passively. Anyway.
Yeah, I would bug people, but I like bugging people.
I might do it.
It makes me think of the Three Amigos when Steve Martin is standing on the top of the roof and he goes, "Hey, you guys, look up here." And maybe if you kind of took that approach to, I don't know, letting Nathan know you had a patch waiting in the wings. I just made it awkward again, didn't I? Oh, God. Okay.
I was just imagining like me putting my face on that and then just sending it to Nathan and not giving him any context and then linking to the patch. Anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, because that wouldn't be creepy or strange. I think you should do that.
I have
Um,
I have little left to lose. So,
well, on that note, we will wrap up another successful episode of Genesis Office Hours. And Cliff, I really appreciate your time and sharing what you're doing. And um, I love seeing just something a little bit different
mm,
in terms of how people are doing business and making their livelihoods. So cool stuff you got going on with Evermore. Look forward to seeing how that evolves over the next year. All right. Well, I'll let you. It's on Twitter at Cliff Seal if you want to see Cliff Seal. And then he said just Google him if you want to find out anymore. So to all you out there on Twitter who have put up with my mispronouncing today, thank you. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye.